Ever wonder how a pharmacist's experiment turned into, well, Coca-Cola? We're diving into Coke's history today, and let me tell you, these documentary snippets you've got, they're packed with surprises.
It's fascinating how Coke went from happy accident to marketing masterclass.
Okay.
It really shows you how a product, even a drink, can become this huge cultural symbol.
Totally. It's like Coke has its own fan club, right? But let's rewind back to the start.
Mhm.
1886, Atlanta, Georgia. John Pemberton, pharmacist turned soda inventor. He's tinkering away, but he's not exactly rolling in dough yet, is he?
And Atlanta itself was buzzing rebuilding after the Civil War, everyone looking for a fresh start. Pemberton, a Civil War veteran himself, he was trying to find his place too. And it wasn't just sodas. He was trying everything, pills, hair dyes, you name it.
Talk about a go-getter. But it's the Coca-Cola recipe that finally clicks. He brings in Frank Robinson, who designs that iconic logo, elegant Spencerian script. You'd think they'd be celebrating instant success story, right?
Not quite. That first year, Pemberton only sells 25 gallons of syrup. We're talking about a loss, not a profit. It just goes to show, even the biggest names, they often start with a few bumps in the road.
So Pemberton, he stumbles onto something big, but unfortunately he passes away in 1888 before things really take off. And here's where it gets really interesting. Asa Candler, well, he almost missed the boat entirely.
Can you imagine missing out on Coca-Cola? Candler, he was all business, and at first, he didn't want to invest. But then, one glass of Coca-Cola, and his mind was changed.
One glass, talk about a life-changing sip. What was it about that moment, that taste, that made him switch gears completely?
It wasn't just the taste. It was like he saw the potential. He saw that Coca-Cola, it could capture the energy of a nation that was on the rise. It had this spark, this ability to tap into something bigger, something people wanted to be a part of.
It's like he took a sip and saw the future, right? But vision without action, it doesn't get you very far. Candler, he was a marketing genius. He had some tricks up his sleeve.
Oh, absolutely. He knew that for Coca-Cola to really take hold, it had to become a part of everyday life.
So how'd he do it? Give us the rundown on those marketing moves.
Well, think about it. This is before radio, television, the internet. Candler went old school, but effective. Free samples, for one, get people hooked on the taste, and then plastering the Coca-Cola logo on everything. Calendars, clocks, those metal serving trays, you name it.
It's true. I've seen those old trays in antique shops. Smart move, that constant visual reminder everywhere you look. He was like the original influencer.
Exactly. But it wasn't just about being everywhere. Candler was obsessed with quality, even back then. You see it in the imagery he used. Coca-Cola linked to art, to elegance. It gave the brand a certain prestige.
You know, you're right. Those vintage Coke ads, they're like collector's items now. Okay, so Candler's got this winning formula, product and marketing, but then there's the whole bottling thing. He wasn't sold on it right away, was he?
It's funny how that happens, isn't it? Such a visionary in so many ways. But he nearly missed out on one of the biggest turning points for Coca-Cola. He actually said, "We don't have the money, brains, or time to get into bottling."
Wow, can you imagine? What was he thinking? Thankfully, those businessmen from Chattanooga, they saw the potential and basically said, look, we got this.
It was a risk for everyone involved. Candler ended up giving them the bottling rights for practically nothing. He knew the upfront costs were huge.
It's like he let other people build his empire for him while he focused on the big picture. A win-win if I ever saw one.
You could say that. By 1909, Coca-Cola bottling plants were popping up everywhere. But, and this is a classic business lesson, success attracts competition.
The copycats come knocking. Everyone wants a slice of the pie. But weren't Coke bottles back then, like, pretty generic looking?
Yeah, totally. Straight sides, easy to mistake for a competitor's bottle.
Yeah.
Imagine reaching into a cooler full of ice, trying to grab a Coke, but they all look the same.
Yeah, you need something that stands out, something instantly recognizable. Enter the iconic contoured Coke bottle. But the inspiration for that shape, that's what gets me every time. So you're telling me the Coke bottle, that iconic shape, it was inspired by something someone saw in a grocery store.
Well, not exactly a grocery store. More like, well, it was a cocoa bean pod. The things chocolate comes from.
No way. That's wild. I mean, you'd think they'd be looking at bottles, other drinks, not nature. But I guess that's how inspiration works, right? It comes from the most unexpected places. But that design, it really was genius.
Totally. You could feel it in your hand. You knew it was a Coke, even in the dark. That's branding right there.
Next level stuff. Okay, but then the world changes, right? World War II. Everything gets turned upside down. You'd think something like Coca-Cola, a treat, it wouldn't really be a priority. But it became something more, didn't it?
It became this symbol of home, of comfort, especially for the troops fighting overseas.
Yeah.
And Coca-Cola, they made a decision. It was a huge risk, but they decided every soldier would get a Coke for a nickel, no matter what it cost the company.
Wow, that's a bold move in the middle of a war, rationing, supply shortages, all that. But they made it happen. Didn't they set up bottling plants right there on the front lines?
They did. Imagine that. You're a soldier, far from home, in the middle of this huge conflict, and you get to have a Coke. It's a little taste of home, a reminder of what you're fighting for.
That's powerful stuff. Okay, so Coke gets through the war. It's this American icon, but the world keeps moving. It's the 1960s. The culture's different. The music's different. How does a brand like Coca-Cola, so tied to tradition, how do they connect with this new generation?
That's the thing about a brand that lasts. You
Yeah.
have to evolve. And Coca-Cola, they realize they couldn't just rely on what worked before. They need to speak to these new customers. And what better way than through music?
Oh, yeah, those jingles. I bet if you say things go better with Coke, everyone listening is hearing the music in their heads right now.
Exactly. It's catchy, it's optimistic, it just puts you in a good mood. And you know what? That jingle, it almost didn't happen. It was originally just a demo, a
Yeah.
rough cut. But the Coca-Cola executives, they loved the energy of it. They took a chance.
Wow. A happy accident, kind of like the invention of Coke itself. It's
Right.
amazing how those things work out. But, even for a company as big as Coca-Cola, they can't get it right every time. The new Coke thing, that was a big misstep.
It's the perfect example of what happens when you underestimate your customers. People have this emotional connection to brands they love, especially something like Coca-Cola. It's part of their childhood, their memories.
It's like that saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right. They tried to change the formula, and people felt like it wasn't their Coke anymore. It caused a huge backlash. And you know what? Coca-Cola, to their credit, they listened. They brought back the original formula, classic Coke.
They admitted they made a mistake. That's
Yeah.
a powerful message, even for a huge corporation.
Yeah.
And, today, Coke it's everywhere. Billions of servings all around the world.
It just goes to show you, even with the missteps, the challenges, Coke found a way to adapt, to stay relevant. They went from that little pharmacy in Atlanta to, well, a global phenomenon.
Talk about a
Yeah.
story. It makes you wonder, next time you see a Coke, what went into that bottle getting there? All the decisions, the risks, the changes, it's all part of what makes Coke, well, Coke.